All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 39 today. We have our good buddy Chris Emerson here, and we are going to discuss the moon.
Houston, we have a problem.
This guy chimes right in.
So let's start this off with the fact that throughout time, humanity, as long as we've been conscious of it, it's kind of pondered the moon. And if you think about it, even though the sun creates life and energy and is the center of our solar system, there's something uniquely weird about the moon that, people don't really question the sun at all, but there's a lot of people that question the moon. Chris, what do you think is the weirdest thing about the moon to you?
Well, I guess the weirdest thing that I don't quite, it's just because of my lack of scientific literacy, I guess, is the fact that you only see one side of it at all times. That seems pretty crazy. But other than that, I mean, I honestly, I look at it every night and I think to myself, this is crazy that is right there. Like same thing with the sun, but it's like I think it's something that I take for granted, and a lot of people take for granted. But it's kind of a strange thing. There's just this big, giant body floating along.
Giant balls, baby.
What's that?
Big giant ball.
Just a big old ball floating around. Yeah, I it's a trip. Like if I'm ever like coming home from a gig or whatever, and it's late or whatever the case is, I always have to stop and just stare at it. I'm like, maybe I'm just tripped out, but I always kind of check them out. Yeah.
Those are dumbbells. Those are just my balls, baby.
Well, you said it. You said something about it being close. I mean, it looks close, but it's pretty fucking far away.
Here's the deal with that. The moon, the moon, there's an equal distance between the Earth and the moon and the sun. We've talked about this on the other thing. Take the distance to the sun, divide it by the sun's diameter, and you get 108. Do the same thing with the moon, and you get 108. So there's a weird thing. The sun is 400 times further than the moon, but yet they appear to be the same size in the sky. And that's because the sun is also 400 times larger. So, I mean,
so what you're saying is they appear, but the first, what was the very first thing you said?
I was just saying the distance. Okay, so there's a lot of people equate 108, like there's Cambodian temple that's got 108 pillars. There's 108, associated with Stonehenge, and then there's also 108 is like I don't know what significance it has in the Hindu religion, but there's some sort of significance there. So I was just saying the distance between, if you take the distance from the Earth to the sun and divide it by the sun's diameter, you get 108. If you do the same thing with the moon, you get 108. So it's almost like the perfect trifecta of distance and proportions, and that's why we get the eclipse.
Right.
And it's like 99.9% perfect or something like that.
It's crazy. You can't make that up.
You can't make that up. So, I mean, and there's even speculation like, with Bible or ancient, pagan ritual stuff, like that's the Holy Trinity would be those three, the earth, the moon, and the sun. There's speculation on that, but I mean, who knows?
Well, yeah, I give the moon a lot of props for pulling the tides back, I mean, that's a big fucking feat. Now, is that responsible for life creating on land? I don't know.
Well, I don't think it creates the tides. What it does is it pushes it back and forth. So it's not just, it's the action of it that's pushing and pulling. So like that like reveals things. Like when you see like shellfish and stuff that gets washed ashore, it's not the fact that there's a tide coming in, it's the fact that it's getting pulled back too, and it's allowing, it's that back and forth motion. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, like I said, like proportionately, it's almost like they're perfect, and I'd have to look at other solar systems to see if there's anything similar like that, but it just seems like, there's a lot of weight put on the fact that they are kind of, like we said, like even though the sun's 4 times further than the moon, or 400 times further than the moon, it appears to be the same size, when it goes across the sky. So
Yeah. Yeah, there was a really crazy kind of orange moon going on a couple nights ago.
Yeah, I think that's the harvest moon.
It was awesome.
Or the next full moon is the harvest moon.
was Neil Young playing on the moon, or
That's a great song, man. And he may live there. I don't know.
Yeah, actually he does.
um so let's get into this though. Okay, so we got a little bit of science out there. Let's get into a little bit of
as
the
much as we fucking know, man. which
let's
is
get
not
into a little
much.
bit of weirdness. I'll add more science in when it fits, but let's get to the stuff you guys want to talk about. I know is the conspiracy shit, like the fake moon landing, or possibly there's suggestions that we actually did land on the moon, but that only the footage was fake because, them doing it the first time, what if something goes wrong, kind of a thing, or it was a space race, so you don't want to appear weak in any way or a failure. So
Right. Well, it also, proved dominance when we said we had rockets that could go to the moon. It just made everybody shit their pants. So we had that going for us.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to know. One thing we do know is for sure some things were, like, for instance, when they were pretending to show the Earth, but it was really like it was the window of the,
Right.
and they like they covered it up in a certain way so it looked like there were some shenanigans going on. That for a fact that they did some silly stuff like that, but it's like, but does that necessarily mean one
The
thing?
whole thing's riddled with shenanigans. Are you fucking kidding me?
I don't know if that's the one I'm thinking of. That particular.
that's the famous one of Earth's, the view of Earth from the moon.
That's not what I'm talking about though. They're inside and they're like it looks like something like that, but it's like they're covering a window or some kind of foolishness like that like people did in the 60s,
Right.
the way with stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, you know what I mean? So
Well, I just want to know: does the moon? Does it mean? Is it bullshit to us now? Because we don't go there anymore. We don't seem to be wanting to.
2020 Moon
Barbara.
Moon Express, which is a company, I think it's like Silicon Valley entrepreneurs got together. They're going to create a robotic mining station on the South Pole of the moon. And you say, why the South Pole? Well, that's a good question because we landed in the Sea of Tranquility, which is kind of in the middle of the moon. But they found that in the shadows and the dark parts of the moon, there could be there is ice that they have found a little bit of ice. And we also know that the moon is rich in titanium. I think, what is it? How many times more? I think the number is like 10 times. There's like 10 times more titanium on the moon than there is on Earth, which is crazy. And that also is speculation of what's called the hollow moon theory, because there's a lot of stories like when the Saturn V rocket got ejected off of the Apollo mission, it got shot out, it hit the moon. Apparently the moon, according to NASA, rang like a bell for 3 hours afterwards, and there was tons of seismic activity. Now, what we know about mass of planets and stars and moons, that shouldn't have happened. So there's obviously not a lot of density or, a heavy core with the moon. So
yeah, I'm fascinated with even the origin of it. I feel like the last, like one of those BBC documentaries or whatever. The last one I saw about that was, it was like that it was all one body, the Earth and the moon's mass, and then some kind of massive collision happened in the early stages, and that was what it came from. But then I can't remember all the details of it.
yeah, that was supposedly our sister planet Theia. Slammed into it, and then the pieces that broke off cooled, and through gravity kind of turned into a moon. So, but I don't. I mean, I guess whatever. That's the mainstream thought on it. I like to think that that's kind of what happened, but part of the other part of my brain that wants to believe in shit says, well, it's too perfect, too important to us, but then you have the other people saying that that's why we are so important, because there was this weird thing that happened that created the possibility for life, with our water and then the tides and then the gravity and then the way that it lines up with the sun during eclipses and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, is there any knowledge about what it's made out of? I know we don't even really know what the Earth is fully
Yeah, there's
constructed
these
of.
guys that wrote this book that said, I forget what it's called. I think it's two Russian guys, but basically, if we were to make the moon out of stuff that we know of, that's what the moon's made out of. So that's why there's speculation that the moon could have been created. And also, a lot of those craters are all the same depth. If this thing was getting pelted with like heavy, big fucking comets and asteroids and all sorts of shit, the crater impacts would be a lot deeper, and they all kind of
Right.
go to a certain depth, like there could be some sort of hard shell right under the surface or something. I mean, we've got different layers on Earth, so that's not that weird that there would be some sort of layering in there. But if if the moon is hollow, then that is kind of weird.
Yeah, you would think it'd be simple enough just to go up there and drill, but again, we have problems doing that on Earth, so I guess it's not that easy.
Yeah, I mean, but we're taking the whole the mining thing, like I said, Moon Express creating a mining station there around 2020. I mean, that's a big fucking deal. Let's see if that happens or not. That's only a year and a half away now, but yeah, and then like big news throughout the whole solar system, finding the water on Mars, underneath that like a frozen lake. I mean, there's just I remember when they poo-pooed the whole life on Mars thing, even like microorganism type stuff, and now they're saying, oh well, maybe there is. It's never real. I don't know. You don't really get definite stuff from NASA because it's always being changed.
Oh, no one wanted to fucking believe David Bowie.
All right, David Noe. But I mean, look, there's weird stuff. There's a lot of people that think the moon is like some sort of matrix too. Anybody that believes all that like conspiracy, like David Icke or Ick or whatever his name is, and then your Alex Jones types of people,
Yeah.
people love that shit. But
Well, yeah, you can go off the deep end, but I remember a couple of years ago I was talking to Chris, and we were talking about all the shit that's just weird about the moon landing.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot of weird stuff. It does get you to think. You're like, okay, is it completely bogus and like nothing? They didn't go, or is it that, like you said, Maisie, did they go? And then they're like, nah, we're not going to show anybody this. Or we're going to film this thing, or it's like, what? It is strange that nobody's been back anytime recently. It seems like it would be a place where I don't know. It seems like somebody would have been back.
Should have a McDonald's up there by now.
Yeah, well, give them some time. Sounds like they're gonna do it soon. I don't know.
Well, I know Trump was trying to go back there. I don't know if somebody talked him out of it or they canceled it, but I thought that they were supposed to try and do something. But
well, I used to be a firm believer that they probably went, but then when they flew back, the Van Allen belt, the radiation wrecked all the footage. So then they came back and had to recreate it to prove to people that they did, and that's where the Kubrick comes in. So there's kind of a little truth in all of that stuff.
I mean, that could be true. Part of what you're saying though is that NASA did admit that they lost a lot of the footage. They said though that what happened was they recorded over stuff for reuse. Number one, which sounds like stupid as fuck. These people
this is a historic moment.
They're raking in all sorts of loot and they can't fucking buy more tapes or whatever. And then the other thing they said is that they just lost it from like transitioning to different buildings and whatever. It just sounded the most epic moment in your history of your program, and you lost all the fucking footage. I don't know, but then
forget about the footage. They lost all the fucking ones and zeros, all the math that proved that the ship went up and all that stuff, and the distance it was from the Earth, and it tracks the whole mission. All the ones and zeros and all that math is just gone.
Yeah, it reminds me of like early '90s when I taped over my sister's Pearl Jam
Taped
set. Man,
over our wedding.
I got promo for that.
Yeah, NASA's doing that shit, man. Come on.
Can you imagine being the guy that's like, sorry, I
Yeah.
taped over the thing, man. You know.
The
Well, that's
fucking
why
hockey game.
speculation that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, if you watch their interviews right after they landed, yeah, you could say they're worn out or they're, you know, feel weird from being in space or whatever, but they acted strange and like kind of down in the interview right after. You'd think that if you just went to the moon, you'd be kind of fucking pumped and excited, you know?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of what spurred this whole or spawned this whole conversation. Is because I was watching Joe Rogan. He's like, "Look at these guys, and they look super shady."
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they're just huge losers and are just totally afraid of being in public and speaking in front of a bunch of people, but it's strange. And all these things, there's just one after another, and it's, you know, I don't want to be Joe conspiracy here, but this is something.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff too. Like, but I think there's a thing about how Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason and he was even performing Masonic rituals in one of the rovers or whatever.
What?
And actually, I think they waited to do shit in the one point until it was like perfectly aligned with like Orion's belt too, or some weird shit like that. So, yeah, there's some weird possible shit going on there. But yeah, and I guess they both became alcoholics or had substance abuse issues when they got back, both Neil and Buzz.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest thing to me though is the fact that the moon has uranium-236 and neptunium-237. Uranium-236 is like radioactive nuclear waste, like byproduct, and neptunium-237 is a radioactive metallic element that's like a byproduct of making plutonium. And those aren't naturally occurring elements, so that's kind of a weird thing. Now I don't know if a star explodes and it shoots shit out into the universe and it just so happens to land there, if that's a possibility. But the fact that we know what we know about the universe and elements and, you know, sending rovers and missions and different things out, we know that those aren't naturally occurring. So
that is very strange. Yeah. Well, hopefully these guys actually do go up there and dig around and see what's going on.
Well, they'd be robots. It would be like sending
Exactly.
like the Mars rover thing. It would be like sending that kind of shit, except they'd be like mining and taking core samples and that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Out of all these crazy bastards living in the world, you can't find some guy to go up there and just fucking prove everybody wrong.
Oh, there for sure would be, but yeah, maybe it's just way more cost effective, you know.
I guess it's just over my head. It is what, 260,000 miles.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot further than people think. So I guess that's part of, you know, people think it's like right there because it's so big. It's just close, you know.
But you can fit every planet in the solar system between us and the moon.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But like spatial wise, not like the distance or yeah. But yeah, you can line them all up.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we supposedly landed in the Sea of Tranquility. I mean, personally, I think we landed on the moon. But I mean, like I said, there could be some fuckery with footage and, you know, maybe redoing shit or filling in blank type stuff, or I mean, who fucking knows? Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like it's one of those things you cannot prove, obviously, because there's only one way to find out is to actually do it yourself, and it's just one.
Well, what do they say about the Van Allen belt? They go through some hole in it?
I don't know about that one. I assume that there's shield. I think I read something on Reddit not that long ago where they're special. They have shielding that protects from the radiation. I don't know if that's credible or not, or if that's even true, but I would think with the technology we have, knowing what we know, we'd be able to, you know, shield against that.
There's also people that said that they saw the actual, like, the canister, like the device that they went in, you know, the can. They said it was like a tin can, the capsule. So I don't know.
But what you said, Hogan, was potentially the film was damaged on the way back, but it's kind of like what. Or I guess it could have just been damaged on the way there too, and then
Yeah.
we're like, oh crap.
Well, that's my theory that kind of wraps in everything, because that shit with the Kubrick, with all the Shining stuff, that stuff's wild. Room 137, or is it 237?
I think it's 237.
Yeah, 237, because that was supposed to be the distance to the moon or something.
You know what's weird though is that shit I was just talking about, Neptunium 237.
Well, yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Is it? You know,
Yeah.
but that thing with the Kubrick, there's that documentary where they talk about it. I think it is called Room 230.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
But the thing is, there was one guy. There was the Jay Widener or something like that, and he was the kind of like this moon guy. He was talking about the moon symbolism and all this stuff. But then there was another guy, unconnected to that guy, that was like, no, this film is about Native American
right.
genocide. So like, it's one of those things where you could, I feel like you could look, if you're looking for some kind of thing, and then this guy had really detailed. He's like, look, and when they're in the kitchen, and there's this one can, and it has a
Tang
or whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no, and there's a can with like an Indian on it, but there also is Tang in there.
And then the part with the elevator with the blood rushing out.
Yeah,
that's supposed to be Indian genocide.
So it's like, I don't, like, so one guy, and then there was another person that was convinced it was some other kind of thing. It was
some of that stuff though with the room, and that because he changed the actual room number from the book, and then the little boy with the ball, and then he stands up. He's got a fucking NASA. He's got a U.S. Army or a USA rocket ship on his shirt, and he stands up. There's some wild stuff.
Yeah, he didn't really do anything randomly.
And that's what I was gonna say. If you believe that Kubrick was the master that he was, obviously he's a genius. Is he that big of a genius where he'll take a book and then take the adaptation of that and then infuse all these crazy theories into it? I would love to believe so, because that would make him one of obviously the best filmmaker ever.
Well, he was one of them anyway.
Well, he is for sure, but
I mean,
to take it to that level, fuck.
What I took from that movie was the fact it was the subliminal messaging is what I took from that whole thing. That's what he was doing with all of what you guys were talking about. Like, yeah, there's different things, but the main point of all of it was this in his movies and commercials and all that shit was the subliminal messaging stuff, just by placing that can there or showing the Indian on, on the thing, or, imagery, or just, it's like, he's trying to spark emotions in your subconscious without you even knowing, Yeah. So that's kind of what I took from that.
Yeah, that kind of thing. It's like, are you just looking for trouble? When you go digging for some of these things, and then you find what you're looking for. Yeah, it's hard to know. It is strange. Like, I feel like our technology now, even though we've come so far, it's still like, even my freaking computer's a pain in my butt, man. I can't sending human beings, to another place that far away and landing the thing. I don't. It sounds crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird shit involved with it, and it's just one of those things that you can't prove. Like, you can prove gravity, just reach out your hand and drop something.
Well, but somebody would say, well, yeah, you can prove it because they have the film. So then you're like, well, you either,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, assuming that you don't believe the film or believe what they're saying, like, the only way to prove it is obviously to actually do it yourself. Or, I mean, look.
Yeah, people have done it themselves. They recreated that shit with the fucking shadows and everything.
Well, here's the other thing: is there's other countries, like, you think if there wasn't some fuckery going on with that, they wouldn't have called shit out,
Well, how come another country hasn't went?
I think there was something on the docket. I'd have to look. Why don't you look that up? See if like Japan or India. I feel like one of them are trying to go to the moon soon or something.
Trying exactly.
No, I meant like for their first time. Well, a lot of these countries don't have the capital or the economy to even do something like that. Do you know how much money it takes to run like a NASA or a European Space Agency and shit like that? It's a lot of fucking money. I'll tell you, not just millions, it's billions. And that's why you see like SpaceX and a lot of these private companies doing it now, because they have all this equity and capital from all their, Silicon Valley ventures and all that kind of shit. So.
But but the part of the thing, who was I just watching? It may have been on Rogan, but they were talking about the difference between the approach that NASA takes with the rockets, and then the private companies, the private companies have an incentive to try to make it reusable,
Yeah.
where and therefore, more cost effective.
Yeah, they're using NASA's old shit and
And then, yeah,
repurposing it.
build one, and then it's a one and done kind of thing for the rockets. So
Right. I mean, that's smart if you ask me. Why wouldn't you do that,
I don't know. Yeah.
It says 3 countries have soft landed on the moon. I don't know what that's got to mean. That just not human. No humans are with them.
Yeah.
Let me find out what a soft landing is. But it's the United States, USSR. So that was clearly during the
Russia.
Cold War,
Yeah.
and then China. Let's see what a cold landing means.
I think China's supposed to be going to the dark side of the moon too, if I'm not mistaken. They've
Are they taking Roger Waters?
oh, that was the other weird thing. Apollo 10 mission, which was the one before, obviously, famous Apollo 11. They heard weird shit on they were doing like some sort of like reconnaissance mission, and apparently they heard some weird music coming from the dark side of the moon. And I know it sounds like, but I guess they kept this like secret. Nobody said anything for like 30 years, but it's like a real thing. You can look it up. But what the fuck is the Cantina band just hanging out on the dark side of the moon, or?
I've had to teach that for a lesson before.
Did you? I heard somebody play it on the ukulele and it was sick. It was like all the parts by like one guy on the ukulele. It was pretty fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Did John Williams compose that song?
Yeah, I think so. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, he's probably top dog when it comes to movie.
Oh, he's 100
movie scores. Oh yeah.
I mean, some other weird stuff too is like, we've talked about this too. Vibration and frequency. Everything spins at a certain, rate and everything. But think about too, like, if the moon affects our Earth and everything that much, it probably is affecting us. It's definitely affecting our circadian rhythms. I mean, think about sleep and the importance of sleep and actually what happens when you sleep. Think about night and day, like the huge difference between the two. But the moon, in terms of, like I said, there's a weirdness about it that I don't get that same feeling when I think about the sun. The sun is a little bit more straightforward, I think. And if something's living on the sun, it's some fucking ashy motherfucker that's been
ashy Larry.
Well, I mean, like, what do you you don't think of like ETs or like alien life living on, it'd have to be some sort of crazy fucking AI or something, if that was which it's definitely not the case. But yeah, the moon's just got some weird shit about it. Like I said, there's people that think it's like the Matrix, like creating some sort of part, like affecting our consciousness in some way or stuff like that. And there's even ancient texts that talk about a time before the moon. Like I said, we know from mainstream that this happened probably 5 billion years ago or 3.5 billion years ago, whenever the Earth was created and Theia hit the Earth and whatever. But there's, definitely other ancient texts that talk about how there was a time before the moon even existed, which is kind of weird. So I mean,
what text says that?
I'll look it up.
Snap! I'm gonna put you to it.
No, yeah, that's crazy.
Well, while you're looking that up, I was gonna say it clearly has an effect on the human psyche, because my mom worked for a doctor's office, and whenever the moon was full, man, all the kooks would come out of the woodwork, and it would always be a hellish day for her. I don't know if people are aware that it's a full moon and kind of getting themselves into that kind of mindset, or if it actually is fucking with their emotions. I've had some pretty crazy experiences on full moons before. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. But yeah, I could see how it may have some kind of effect, but coming from the Vedantic angle, you would say, yeah, but still there's a hierarchy, and your intellect is at the top of it. And so even if there's some kind of physical adversity or change or fluctuation, you should be able to, that would be the,
So you're saying they're psyching yourself out, or
Well, or you're it would be like letting yourself
succumb
be
to?
reactionary, or like unnecessarily.
Okay.
Like, so if you get over emotional, they're like, well, that's because you weren't checking the mind with the intellect. And so, like, in other words, it'd be like an excuse to say, well, the moon's full, so I'm gonna go.
Right, but I think there are people that aren't even totally aware that it's full, and
Well, that's the whole problem, is not being aware.
right.
Okay, so there's ancient Aboriginal stories that talk about pre-moon folk, which are obviously people that live before the moon. Um, and there's also Sumerian records that talk about Anunnaki, which some people just think ancient aliens when you say that, but that's in the Sumerian text was the gods. And that talks about how there was a time before the moon, or people living on Earth before the moon.
Well, maybe an asteroid hit, and that's what that a piece of it sharded off, and
Sure.
Well, I mean that's a big deal though, because I mean, look, those are ancient texts. They could just been making that shit up, to kind of
right.
myths.
Just I mean, it's just like
I
the
do
Bible. No
believe
matter
some
what
myths are
time it
real
was like.
things, like flood myths, and there are certain things that I do believe are real. But then there are other myths that maybe are ways they're trying to scientifically explain something by using stuff that they knew. But that's a big deal because imagine, everything we know is predicated on the fact that the moon created the tides. And, we started out as ocean dwelling, organisms that slowly started walking up on the beaches because of the tides. And so, I mean, that would put a big fucking damper in the evolutionary or, origin of species, Darwin.
Hell
So
yeah, I'm convinced that it's the most advanced piece of technology there is.
there's some people, there's even
Prove me
speculation that
wrong.
a lot of this alien stuff is the fact that the moon was dragged here purposefully. Like if you thought about it, yeah, there was probably the sun and yeah, our Earth, whatever. But the second you drag this other fucking thing into the mix, it changes everything.
But what about all the moons on other planets? What are they there for?
I mean, there's speculation there could be life on Titan, which is one of,
What is that, Jupiter's?
yeah.
Yeah, isn't
And
that is that actually could house life?
I don't know if Europa might have water, I think, too. And then there's other weird shit too, like we've talked about this on others, there's something tugging on Neptune and I think it's either Venus or Jupiter's orbit a little bit. So there's some celestial body that we know that's out there that's has enough gravity to pull on a couple planets. So I mean, that's some people speculate that's what Nibiru is, or possibly some sort of dwarf planet or something out there.
It's giving a little rub and tub.
Yeah, it's giving a little rub and tug. But then you got Ceres. Ceres is a dwarf planet, and it's in our asteroid belt. I mean, there's a lot of shit that people don't know about that's just hanging out in our solar system.
Yeah, it's quite humbling to look up there. I really got into this stuff when I started taking pictures of the moon and the stars and all that shit. When you
Yeah.
take a picture with these cameras, it's a very long exposure. So you click it, and then the screen's all black, and you wait for your camera to suck in a bunch of light. So you're sitting there for half a minute or whatever, and then the picture, boom, appears, and it's incredible. You're looking at something that you can't see with your eyes very well.
Let's pull up a picture you took.
That's awesome. That reminded me, Hogan, that one of the things is that they left the reflectors so that you can. Wow, you did that, Hogan?
I didn't take that.
I'm joking. I've got one of his though. I'm gonna pull it up right now. I got your blood moon one here.
Yeah, that was from I think 2 years ago. It was an eclipse. I don't really have very good gear for shooting moons. I don't have super massive focal lengths, but that's essentially what.
All right, there you go.
Oh, that's good. That's kind of like the one that I saw.
Yeah, I think they had. Well, that's an eclipse, but yeah, those blood orange moons are pretty sweet.
There was something weird though last week too. You could see like double moon because of some weird reflection thing or something. I didn't end up seeing it myself, but
what I was saying though is the reflectors, so that you can point a laser at the specific spot.
Oh, really?
in the back. Yeah, you should look that up. I forget exactly what the deal is, but anybody can do it as long as you have the stuff, the
Yeah,
gear.
our Maisie's stepbrother has these. He had these army issued lasers. These things were fucking nuts. That's a little blurry because I had to blow it up, but that
Sure,
was a
pal.
long time ago.
Cool.
You know, those pictures you took of the Perseid meteor shower when we were camping this year in the Milky Way and stuff, those were actually really good pictures. Anybody interested, they can go on to Mike and Maurice, mindescape.com, and it's under the picture section.
Can you look up the what the thing is about how the orbits are synced in a way where you only see the same side?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
you mean,
looking.
well, that's just, yeah, you mean how the moon's
It,
constantly facing
yeah.
the the non-dark side of the moon's always facing us, you mean? Is that what you're,
Mm-hmm.
let's see if we
Well,
can pull
what's
something up.
the you can pull something up. It looks like it's a pretty long
Mm-hmm.
explanation for this stuff.
Try and bring up a picture though, because we can't play movies on YouTube because you
Here
can't
we
play other
go.
people's shit.
You can.
No, you can't. Motherfucking robot algorithm will get you.
Oh, they get you fast with that.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
with like music stuff too.
Here, I'll pull this up, but
absolutely.
as soon as I stop talking, it's not gonna be on anymore.
Here,
So
I'm gonna pull it. I'll pull it up. Here, do it again.
there you go. It's pretty crazy too, because the moon is always popping up at different spots. Like I'd go out and and shoot the moon and be coming right out of Lake St. Clair. Then I'd go to the same spot the next night, and it wouldn't be at the same spot. It's just kind of like, I mean, there's apps that you can get to track the moon and everything, but it's kind of a meticulous bastard. You got to be on that, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean that's why we're doing an episode on the moon and not the sun. It's just because it's so fucking weird, you know. Um,
Sun's
you know,
pretty weird too, man. I mean, the situation is weird.
well,
Right.
You can
it's like
tell.
constantly billion nuclear explosions happening all at once. Yeah, that is weird. But like I said, there's something mysterious about the moon, and I think I think because it's correlated with sleeping and nighttime and dreams. You know, like I said, the fact that when we dream, we go to this fucking weird realm. You know, like I mean, who knows?
We can also stare at it. You can't stare at the sun.
That's true too.
Yeah.
There's something about, being up north and just looking up at the stars, and it's almost like time to start pondering life or pondering outside of your norm.
What have you either of you guys ever had any like weird dreams about the moon or anything?
I had a dream it was made out of cheese.
I
You're
don't.
made out of cheese.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think I have either.
me either. And I rarely dream about like space or anything like that. But like I said, I just find it weird. I don't know. It's just got this mystical ass fucking quality to it, you know. And I think some people, when they think of like occult type stuff, though, I think Saturn is the one that most people are drawn to. You know, it's got that weird hexagonal pole that almost
But
looks like a,
isn't it supposed to be the dark star,
well,
an
I
old
mean,
sun that imploded or something?
yeah, that was like because most star or solar systems or star systems are binary systems,
Right.
and ours isn't, and that's what partially makes it so unique. But yeah, there's speculation at one point that it was another sun or something, and something happened. I don't know if I believe that, but there's a lot of like occult and like satanic type stuff and different correlations. And there's a weird six-pointed hexagonal. If you look at the pole of Saturn, there's this weird like hexagonal shape on there, and then it's the sixth planet. I don't know what the if you're looking for the third six, I don't know what it would have been, but I mean there might be six rings. I don't know. Actually, I think there's seven rings. So, but yeah, I mean there's our whole solar system itself's weird, but there's just a few things that get a little bit more attention than now. Nobody's talking about Jupiter. When people talking about Neptune and Uranus, people don't talk about that shit. You know but we talk about the moon and Saturn and all that. Those two things are probably the most unique, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get into these planets that are just balls of gas. I don't think that's that cool, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not really that cool, and it's not even like it's not even like we would want to go there because there's nothing, you could learn about like gas or the way stuff's suspended or stuff like
They're
that,
actually doing some studies on Jupiter in that storm. That relentless fucking hurricane, the eye
Oh
of,
yeah,
of
the
Jupiter or
eye.
whatever.
Yeah,
Is it like 300 years that it's been going?
yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
long fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think that's just as insane to me, that stuff. I think that what it seems like is because the moon is so uh, relevant to us and it seems so close that you kind of like it's almost like you look for extra stuff with it. Whereas I kind of disagree. I think the whole thing is unreal. Uh I don't like particular. I don't think like, oh, Saturn, this has a special like thing going on. The whole thing is insane
Yeah.
to me. Kind of, it's like it doesn't even make any. It's like, what is actually going on here?
Does the Vedanta touch anything? Did it
Yeah,
have anything to do with the space travel or
they
celestial
do,
stuff?
and I know that the Swami Bhaktivedanta, who I think is the guy that George Harrison and all those rocker guys were going to at one point. I know he had a lot to say about it, and they have a whole uh, mythology behind it, and there are gods involved. And but I have not studied that in particular because it doesn't really come up, or it hasn't so far in the Gita, which has been, like I said, my main focus, and it's not really, that's not what's going on in that one. That one's about the battle with Arjuna, and he's talking to Krishna. So I haven't come across a lot of that kind of stuff. But even with all that, I think they would just say it's this. Everything is just the self. You
Yeah.
know, like um,
Didn't
Well,
you say we
go
talked
ahead.
about planets and stuff being like celestial bodies being conscious before, and that each one having its own unique trait and everything? I
oh,
remember you. I remember you saying something about how like you choose like if you're studying Vedanta and there's reincarnation and everything, and reincarnation would also align with picking like if I'm going to go to Earth and get work done here for my soul or my consciousness or something, as opposed to like a Mars, or this guy was from Mars and now he's going to Earth, that kind of a thing.
yeah, I think that's more like the. I think Steiner had stuff to say about that kind of thing. Like but it wasn't like he wasn't talking about actual like people walking around on.
No,
Let's
like
Right.
consciousness or something, right?
yeah, and but that's yeah. That's something that I don't know too much about as far as even what he says about it. Although I remember, um, yeah, he would say the Christ is like the sun, it's the center, and uh, so he relates it to that. No, but I don't know the full, this,
Gotcha.
this person goes here or there or whatever, but um,
Well, what does
but
Christianity say? They say, "Oh, God points his finger, and then all this shit was created." And
but
that's
but
the
Yeah.
but
end.
even just back to but at the end of the day, even with all its wonder and beauty, I think it's just all the self, and it's beyond uh, our ability to comprehend as we are now. It's like you have to awake, like a dreamer wakes. You become the waker. You don't like you're
Yeah.
not dreaming like, oh, I'm this other guy. Actually, you wake up to it, and then so they say everything we see and think is real. You wake up to uh, the ultimate truth, and you can't. It's not something from this standpoint you can understand. You have to become it. So, uh, like I don't really try to think too much about these tripped out like planet things because it's like it takes away from the self, trying to go to the ultimate thing.
Right.
I mean, that's
Um,
where what I've been kind of into lately is not outward exploration, but inward exploration. I think that maybe some of the answers to some of these things can be found more within than, like we have this awesome universe that's infinite and ever expanding, but what the fuck do we know about ourselves? Like what the fuck do we know about this planet? 70% of our planet's water, and like 90% of the oceans have never been explored, so it's like we're going outward and we're taking all these tangents and we're not even, kind of looking ourselves in the mirror, if you will.
I actually, yeah, that actually is kind of the perfect analogy, and I was thinking about that a little bit ago, before we started. That it is kind of like, it's the perfect analogy of where people are seeking, like like outward.
Yeah.
Where what it really tells you is that's the exact opposite place you need to search.
So space is a perfect metaphor for that.
Well, especially all the effort and all the time and money and everything that goes into doing those things, and it can't tell you anything about answering. Like it always comes down to who is the I that says I am. That's, you can't find that on another planet.
Well, NASA invented cordless power drills, so don't fuck around, man.
No, I mean, like I understand.
I think it's marrying the two. I think, like I've talked about this before, during the scientific revolution, it was a mixture of philosophy, science, music, spirituality. There wasn't one thing that was getting shit done. It was a bunch of things combined. Not that we need to do that exact model, but I don't think that reductionist scientists are going to give us all the answers as much as they think they are. I'm not saying that nothing has been, obviously, we've had great success with a lot of this stuff, and there's been some real visionary people that have gotten some stuff done. But as a whole, people are so concerned about what's out there as opposed to, there's people that have internal struggles every day that don't address them, and then they turn into something else. Everybody's so concerned about everybody else around them except for themselves that it's almost like constantly passing blame without fixing yourself. And then I think that's kind of why we're in this world that we're in now that people don't like, is because everybody's been kind of passing the blame, and instead of just looking themselves in the mirror and saying, hey, I fucked up, I did this, or hey, I fucked up and did that, they just want to pass it off on somebody else.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the crux of it. Yeah. So it like so back to the space travel, then I kind of think about all that goes into that and all the effort, and it's like things are just falling apart here,
Yeah.
in a big way, and so like, and it's funny because when I was a little kid, I was obsessed with, like, I loved having, like, remember those glow stars, like
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They'll wreck your fucking wall.
like the nerd space posters, like
Yeah.
I loved that, but then like I guess it's kind of like for me it's a fruitless effort. It's like what none of the ultimate answers that I would be looking for could be found. Yeah, like
Right, they're gonna say, "Oh, this gas is Jupiter." Okay.
even if you find life somewhere else, which I'm sure, like, it's almost a certainty that it has to exist, or it seems it would somewhere else. But even if you find that, it's still like, who is I? Who is?
Unless we're living in a closed system.
Well, it doesn't. But it doesn't even matter. It doesn't, like, again, it doesn't answer the question. When I say I am, who is, like, what is that? Like, to answer, like, who am I?
Yeah.
Or what is consciousness? It's like we can't. So they would, in Vedanta, it's the self. It's one, and even like, so like getting obsessed with, like, oh, the Big Bang or this or that. It's like, well, I still something. We're here, so something exists. That's that's the core issue. What is going on?
Did you watch? Have you seen our episode on, or do you know who, like, Tom Campbell is? We talked about, like, simulation theory and how he's got this idea that we're basically living in a simulation, not necessarily a technological one, but just think of how we look at robots. Something could be looking at us the same way. and that we're in some system that's what entropy is like the measurement of randomness, and we're trying to get to this place where there's lower and lower entropy, so there's no randomness and everything's just love. So it's like this funnel all heading towards this one big blob of love. Like that's where we're all heading. That's pretty much the gist of it. But I mean, there's a lot of more. I mean, he's a NASA physicist and scientist and everything. So I mean, he's not just some weirdo guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a simulation in the sense that it's not the ultimate reality. But I don't know that we're talking about the same thing with that particular. Like, I'm not familiar with that guy.
Well, he's all about like meditation and out of body experiences. Like he did a lot of stuff with remote viewing for the government and like that kind of stuff. So he's all about like the astral plane, and he's basically a real scientist that's saying these things are real and we don't understand them, kind of. But he's got a theory on it.
He's the only fucking scientist that believes in spirituality. It's a lost breed, unfortunately.
I don't know. I mean, I think two things get conflated all the time. One is religion, and two is whether you want to call it spirituality or acknowledging that you don't, like just saying I don't know. I was listening to an interview with Neil deGrasse. What's his name?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. And he was talking about with Sam Harris about his problem of being labeled an atheist because he doesn't like what that has come to mean and what it represents. Which is almost like just the flip side of religion. It's like they are almost dogmatic and religious with the way they approach things. And he's like, he
lays down the facts that are been proven.
What's that?
I said he just lays down the facts that have been proven time and time again. I don't really think he goes into that.
No, I think I heard part of what you're saying too, and he talked about it on Joe Rogan too, how he doesn't necessarily believe in a God, but he's not going to get mad at somebody else that does, because it's counterproductive towards finding an answer.
Yeah, and he's not going to be a provocateur about it. Like you can critique religious thought if you want, but being like some of these guys are like, it's like you're not going to really win too many people over with this kind of like it's not a good way to win an argument, I don't think, to be like abrasive in your approach.
Right.
So, anyway, even from that, but there's, so what I think it's this was my point a second ago. I think sometimes even I do like watching a lot of debates with Sam Harris, and he's a really super smart guy. But I think sometimes he's attacking like kind of like religious fundamentalist types, and then mixing in anybody that questions things, like, but isn't necessarily religious. I feel that way, like with that group, and it's like I'm not in the same group as that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, he loses me at determinism. So
well, yeah, because even though, see, and Vedanta has things to say about this too. It's like, even though you have what they call vasanas, or your it's your kind of your bundle of desires. It's what propels you into the life you're living. Even though that is determined by your past actions, you still have, there are certain limitations to what you can choose, and restrictions and things have been determined, and you're dealing with its cause and effect. But you still always have the choice to keep directing yourself in a different way if you choose. Now, you have to deal with the consequences of what you've done, but that's not the same as to say that then you have no choice ever. That doesn't.
That actually sounds like that Tom Campbell shit a little bit, in the sense that he's talking about probability. So like, if you're in jail, you pretty much have no options. But if you're a baby being born, or let's say an adolescent or becoming an adult for the first time, you almost have unlimited amounts of choices. But for certain people in certain situations, let's say You know, you got in a car accident. Well, there's only a certain amount of things that you can do from there, you know? So it depends on the situation you're in, but there's a probability of usually like, 5 to 20 things that you will do based on what just happened
Yeah.
and your past too. But yeah, I mean the whole determinism thing where everything we've talked about this too, it's like
Yeah, your whole life's been determined already.
it's like a game, and it's like, if you told, we're playing basketball, and if you told me how much force you were pushing at what angle, and all it gave me all the dimensions of everything, I could tell you if you were going to make the shot or not, like that type of thing. But I would only know that knowing what I know from like an outsider perspective based on what's there. So like, let's say there's a God knows everything that's going to happen. So in that case, maybe there is a determinism applied to one person that knows what's going to happen before it happens because he's omnipresent, omnipotent, whatever. But yeah, if you're an outsider looking in and you have all the answers, then it is determinism. But if you're in the thing or in the game or in the simulation or in the life or whatever, you don't have those tools, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
He goes,
Did
yep.
you know I was gonna say yeah again? Yeah.
But like I said, I we can talk about all these philosophers and different things all night long, but it still doesn't change the fact that as much as we know, there's still very little that we know, which is a scary proposition.
Yeah. But it's also I think of it in terms of how I think of like music stuff. It's like I kind of get excited. It's like I don't want to be purposely ignorant of things, but then it's exciting to know there's so much more to learn. I think that's awesome. I love that. Like it's fun to find something you're limited in, and then be like, wow, man, there's so much stuff I can take in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. It's like, I don't know. For me, I don't want to get tethered to one thing or the other because everything always keeps changing.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, well, now we know that we don't know. So now that we know that, we can try and know a little more.
That's one of the most important things to know.
But do you know?
Yeah.
I think what I've come to from all my studying and reading and everything in the last couple of years, what's come down to is that there's only one truth, and that is that truth is ever evolving. That's the only thing I can take from all, besides like, Descartes, I think therefore I am, which is, a pretty basic one. But from there, the only thing I know,
one.
the only thing I know is I've had epiphanies, and I'm like, that's the answer. That's the shit. And then you learn something else, or you experience something else, and it's like, oh shit, there's a lot more to this. Maybe that's wrong. And then it just keeps going on and on and on and on. So the only truth I know is that truth is ever evolving. And I don't like what you're saying. I don't want to plant myself into one seat because you don't know if that, seat's going to get ejected at some point.
Yeah, I'd almost like frame it. I know what you mean. I would almost frame it differently in the sense that it seems like truth should have some kind of constant to it. So the idea that truth itself is evolving would diminish its value to me. But the idea that our perception of it or our closeness to it is changing, that would make sense to me. Like you know what I mean? Like
so you're taking like a Newton approach to it, where there's a constant in the universe. There's it's this constant thing, and you're saying that our inability to understand that one constant is what makes it always fluctuate. I would agree with that, except I think that how we interact with each other, whether it be phone or TV or talking in person or experiencing things together, whatever, I think that has a huge impact on truth too, the way that humanity interacts with itself. So I get what you're saying. I mean, there's certain scientific truths, and constants out there, but I also think that we are so complex that it might not be that simple. that's, you know, but I do agree with you that there is some sort of like gray area that we all need to meet in, you know.
Yeah, no, I was just more talking about the truth itself. I wouldn't call truth itself fluctuating, like in the sense like you would say, back in the day the Earth was the center of the solar system, you know, and then
Right.
but then that was the truth, and then but then it was just that we didn't know how to look at it, and we didn't actually know the deal, and then that becomes the truth, and then Newton comes along and has his math, and that was the truth, and then Einstein, you know, does his thing, and then others later, and it's like, but I would say that rather than those all being truths, they were none were true.
Okay.
Do you
So you're
see?
saying it's just we just don't have, like what we were saying about playing basketball. You just don't have that outsider's perspective of what's actually happening.
Yeah, like I would just say that rather than the truth evolving, it's just that our proximity to it is changing. Like we're getting a little closer to it. But then again, I still don't think you through those means can ever get to the ultimate truth.
So is Mulder wrong? The truth is not out there?
But that actually brings up an interesting point though too, because I think that what you're saying actually is a truth in its own right, but it's like things that we use like science and stuff that we're figuring out even now. We've got the CERN, the Hadron Collider doing shit, and you know they're doing all
Yeah,
sorts of
spitting
crazy.
us into other dimensions and shit, man.
Well, no, well, I was watching the thing.
Berenstein.
They said even if they created like a mini black hole, it would be so small that it would like dissipate in the air. Like, it'd be like smaller than a molecule. But what I was gonna say involves
That
like
shit baffles my mind too, man.
our academic understanding of what's going on right now. So yeah, you know, the theory of relativity, they were still proving that that's actually right with different things that we're experiencing, like black holes and different things. But in terms of quantum theory, we're fucked. We're still on we're in a three-dimensional world. And you need 11 dimensions for string theory to be true,
Here we go.
14 dimensions for M theory to be true, and 26 dimensions for superstring theory to be true. And we've only gotten fucking 3. So, I mean, you got like people like Sean Carroll, who's a theoretical physicist. I think he's a teacher at one of those colleges in California too. And you got all these people working on all this stuff. You know, Neil Tyson doesn't even hold a candle to some of these other fuckers doing this stuff. But those are all math and probability based, and we don't know what's going on the quantum level, and we don't know what's happening during the double slit experiment. We do know what's happening in terms of like what we can observe, but they don't understand exactly what's happening with it. So,
yeah, I mean, the
You just think when we get down to the quantum level, it's just a waste of time, don't you?
well, I mean, think about like
Yeah.
as above, so as above, so below
I can
type
see
of
it in
thing.
your eyes, man.
You know, you could take the Giants marble theory, like we're living in this thing, and then we're living in a thing that's living in a thing that's living in a thing. You know, we could be a cell and something else. That's weird to think about. I don't think it's necessarily true, but you know, there's certain mind experiments you can play with that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weird shit with that. You know.
Yeah, but like here's where I'm coming from. Let's say you are the thing inside of the thing that's a thing, or whatever. You know, like you keep the
right.
Let's say that is true, and then you find out that that's true.
Doesn't change.
You still haven't said, well, who is the I that is experiencing it?
Right.
You know, like who is like, and that sounds like a really silly thing, but it's like
no. I mean, some of the most basic questions are the most intense, serious ones that nobody ever asks. So I don't think that's silly at all.
You know, like, you would still be a conscious being. You're there, and you have to ask yourself, well, who is the I? Who am I? You know, and you can't answer that through what you're describing would be, where am I? You know, that would be more
Right.
would be the answer to that question. It still doesn't say who are you, where do you come from, those kind of things. And so like you can't, you know, I don't think you can get there through those means. But like even when you're talking about Sean Carroll and all the math and stuff, I was thinking of how it's just an abstraction, and then digging into more music stuff, and you see how complicated and seemingly designed all of it is, and it's insane. The way that music fits together. You guys, you know what I mean. Sometimes
Right.
when you discovered like Mixolydian is the fifth.
Yes, scales and modes and all sorts
And
of
you
shit.
see all the patterns and all the geometry and even just the shapes and all this stuff, you know, and or just looking at a piano it's like we created those instruments, but the thing of music, it's all here, all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting question. Where does that come from?
Right. We created things that we use to create more things. And
That's
I don't know.
that's more like a little more interesting to me than like
A gnat's ass.
than like the thing about Mars or whatever. It's like, yeah, I mean that would be awesome to find out about life, but we're falling apart here anyway, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Another weird thing to think about too is think about like us. Like we have gut bacteria. There's millions of them in there. Those things control what the fuck you put in your body and shit, you know?
Yeah, well, everything's
I'm just saying, like, think about it, like, in terms of that. Like, and we've talked about this on the AI thing. Like, we might create a robot. Maybe that robot's going to create something that's not even robotic, but something else that it's its own creation. Just how, like, we created that robot. Maybe there's something else that's created us that we think of as us being different because we're biological. But what does that even mean? There could be some fucking higher level than that, you know?
yeah, but like again, then you would you're in the same boat.
I don't know. I don't want to hear
Yeah.
this eye shit. I want you to speculate on that, my friend.
Oh, what's that?
Just this like multi like dimensional. Okay, like we talked about this too, and I know we were talking about this with your brother on the camping trip we went on. The book Flatland by Edwin Abbott talks about, you know, one dimensional. You're looking at a line with a bunch of dots on it, and you can only see the dots, you know, in a one frame. Or 2D, you're basically playing. You're in Mario Brother land, you know, just the 2D spectrum, and then we're living in 3D. Imagine something that's in 4D. We might not even be able to perceive it at all, or if we do, it's like a tiny piece of it, you know. So I mean, you can go on infinitely like that. So maybe, you know, who knows? Maybe we're seeing like 2% or 3% or less than that of what's actually out there.
Yeah, I think we might be talking apples and oranges a little bit though, because like even still,
Bananas and grapefruits, bro. Come on.
like even so, you're still in the same boat. It's more describing where are you, or you know, like it's not the fundamental question to me.
You're just like my fucking Uncle John with that shit. It doesn't change anything. And then like I totally respect that, but something about my mind always pushes me to look for these answers. And maybe that's just
You got to get out of the material, bro.
no, it's not about the material though, because I'm constantly thinking about the non-material and the metaphysical and all that kind of shit. I'm just saying in terms of I get what you're saying and I apply that to my life, but I still think that there's something that can be learned that is not about that, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does.
Well, it does, because that's what every single person does. Like we pursue things here. It's not like you say, well, life doesn't matter, you know, so I don't have to figure anything out. It's, I mean,
There's people that do that.
No, yes, there are. Yeah, there are, and there's nihilists, and you know, all kinds of different people.
This is Big Lebowski. What the fuck's going on?
No, really, you know, but that's where that kind of thinking seems to be leading to. I feel like a lot these days is more nihilism and not believing in anything, and not like the thing is, I can get with not believing anything in the sense of not just taking anything without questioning it, and you know, like, so in that sense of being skeptical. And but then if where you get to leads you to nothing matters and there's no purpose,
I almost feel like that's what science always leads you to, though, because
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, these
if you just die in a million years, what am I even gonna have left? Let's say
Well,
you
that's how
are a
these
movie
people think,
star,
like,
your movies might be gone.
yeah, Lawrence Krauss doesn't believe in God. He makes fun of people that do believe in God. He's like one of those scientist fucks, the Big Bang theorist types that, like what you're saying, that's kind of the road, and that's what they're teaching in school and stuff. So it's kind of hard to go against that or create this culture, what you're talking about, where we shouldn't think like that because that's kind of what people are being programmed to.
yeah, but even like so, and Lawrence Krauss bugs me so much, man.
I fucking punch his smug ass in the face.
But let me say this though. The thing is that again, he's kind of punching at a not. It's like a not. It's like when you just said God, like he doesn't believe in God. It's like first of all, we can't we're saying a word that we can't even define. Like
Right.
so if if I ask Hogan, what does God mean to you? And I ask you, and then you ask me, I can guarantee you that every single one of us will give a different answer.
I mean, for me, it's pure energy or whatever the building blocks of everything is.
But the point being that when you say a word, but words are supposed to hold a consistent. Remember when I was talking about truth, and it has to have a
right. I get what you're saying.
word doesn't have a value, and then so he's attacking like a word that nobody really agrees on anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is we acknowledge that there's something more we don't know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's attacking this caricature of it. It's like I think a lot of people aren't at that.
Sam Harris does the same thing too. When you see him fight with like Jordan Peterson or Brett Weinstein or one of these other guys, when they fight about it, he's like so against it, almost like he's jealous. And he might not be jealous, but it's like that guy that like wants to poo-poo something that he wishes that he was in on or had some sort of insight on,
Well, if you lived your whole life and everyone passed away and you lost your parents and your whole thought process is this is it, I'd be jealous too of someone that had more of a scope and wasn't so fucking.
Yeah, but is that what happened to
centered.
him, or are you just
I don't
saying
know.
that?
I'm assuming. Well, think about it. If you go down the road, he's going down. You die, and that's it. You turn into dust.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't the second law of thermodynamics? I mean, we're basically energy, so technically we have to exist after we cease to
Yeah, you
exist.
go into the ground, you become food for other shit.
But it can
That's
only
the
be
idea.
transferred. Yeah, but I mean, that's what we are. We're stardust, according to Carl Sagan, is the famous thing, but I don't know, man. I think that it's the truth lies somewhere in between. I think you need science. I think you need philosophy. I think you need all these different people to speculate on different. And I think you need even some of the wackos because the truth lies somewhere in that primordial soup of gray area, and nobody, like you're saying, nobody can really get to it, but we know it's there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Like working in harmony. That was one of the aims, I think, of anthroposophy is that Steiner was trying to create a spiritual science.
Yeah, that's what I like. That kind of stuff.
But yeah, of course we need science, but we need.
I just hate that you say science and it's immediately you're just like there's nothing, there's no faith, there's nothing but cold hard facts.
I mean, you could look at that's why we're at where we're at with humanity too, because back in the day, people would think, oh, this person's got it tough. They'll go to heaven or whatever. Or this person, this. Now it's like there is no heaven, so we have to make everything as comfortable and as awesome which is a good goal. Everybody should be comfortable. Everybody should be taken care of. Everybody should be happy. Everybody should live their best life. But there's this like pursuit to make every single person on earth equal or happy or something like that. And I don't know that'll even ever happen, even if we used all of our resources for that kind of stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I fundamentally, I would say that the times where I get into trouble, whether it be just in general, just in life, or just in a funk or something, is when I'm too comfortable. I think being comfortable is one of the things to run away from, But like, what you want to be content even if you're not comfortable. That would be the goal, I would think, you know. Because then you rely, again, it's the external pursuit thing, you know.
Right. No, I mean, I agree. I think going through a tough time or having some major bullshit happen and having to overcome it, I mean, I think that makes some of the best people, some of the most creative people. I mean, if you look at some of the top artists or top musicians or top thinkers or whatever, they've all had to go through something. Nobody's really tiptoed their way into anything amazing. You know, it's all been some tough shit. And, you know, like the old saying goes, you know, you create a diamond with pressure, you know, so, yeah, I don't think we have enough pressure. I think it's just, you know, too much la la land and reductionism, and that's where we are.
Boom.
But let's wrap it up. We're gonna have you back on. We couldn't do it today, but we'll do it another day. We want to talk about lucid dreams, and we'll get our other buddy Lee Adams on here, and you guys can kind of go back and forth, a more scientific approach to it, and then I like your Vedanta and kind of Buddhism approach to it.
Cool. Yeah, I love see that kind of thing. Actually, I know you just said you wanted to end, but on
No,
that,
go ahead.
I think that's a fascinating state of mind to be in with the lucid dream, because it's unique in that when you're the waker, you're not usually you're never the dreamer and the waker at the same time. And then when you're the dreamer, same thing. You're not the waker. And then in Vedanta, they also talk about the deep sleep. So you're never two of those things at the same time. You can only be one at a time. You're the deep sleep with no dreamless state. You're the dreamer, or you're the waker. And so when you lucid dream, somehow you are two at once, which it's unique that way, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of cool insights that can be had with that. But yeah, anyway, I was about to go on a tangent with that, but I guess I'll save it for whenever.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, then save it if it was going to be some good shit. But yeah, we'll get you back on here maybe in the next couple weeks. I know little Maury is going to fucking Vago.
Cool.
Just for the weekend, I'll be back.
You better leave everything there, dude. Whatever happens there stays there. But yeah, we'll get you back on soon, and this was awesome. Thank you for coming on, and we'll catch you next time.
Cool. Thanks.
Fly me to the moon.
Peace, guys.
Peace.